Is 2018 the year you unlock your full potential? I know you have a dream of what you want your personal finances to look like, but do you have a vision plan to get you there? Tune in today, and we're going to unlock all of your opportunities.
It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
Bo, 2018.
That's kind of crazy, right?
Start of the 13th year of doing the Money Guy show.
Is it really been 13?
Started in January of 2006. So with
Our
that,
show's a teenager. Think about that.
if it starts acting like my teenager, it means we won't see the show as much but that's actually the opposite. We're going to be like an overachieving teenager by having this show up in people's lives more often. I always like when we start a brand new year. Now, it's not as true as it used to be. It used to be because everybody gets brand new gadgets. Maybe it is because people are getting the Echoes, and they're talking to Alexa, they're talking to Siri, they're talking to all kind of, artificial intelligence. But I always like to recognize and welcome our brand new listeners, because it doesn't surprise me that this is usually when we get an uptick in how many downloads, how many people are out there. Yep. That also ties into New Year's resolutions.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the sad fact is, I'm going to give you a stat in a minute that almost brings tears to my eyes, because there's a lot of percentage of the population that's just not successful with New Year's resolutions.
We started and don't have the staying power.
That's exactly right. We want the Money Guy show to give you that staying power. We want this to be the resolution that you keep, as well as takes you to the next level. And that gives me a few other reminders. A few of you, I love that we've created a movement, Bo. So many of you guys are writing saying, hey, are y'all working on your net worth statements? and it cracks me up, because it is indeed true. Bo, you did yours. You cheated. Was that even Friday even? Was it a new year?
Well, it was the 29th of December, but, it was the last trading day, so a lot of the values were there. So I did my net worth statement on December 29th.
So to give you all a peek behind the curtain, Bo is so excited, he doesn't even wait until the following year to start doing his net worth statement. I came in, I guess it was the first day, the second?
Second
or third, I came in and I did my net worth statement. Remember, guys, the reason we want you to do your annual net worth statement, I had one of my close personal friends, he asked me what I do with my finances to kick off the year, and this is the first thing I threw out. And I said, this is an incredible opportunity, because not only do you get to get an accounting of what you have going on, both assets, liabilities, total net worth, but you also get to see, how's my liquid capital doing? How much cash am I keeping on hand? How about my investments? How much do I have in actual investment? Are my debts, are they on a trend of being paid down? And it's just nice after you do this for 3, 5, 10 years, we're getting into decades of doing it. It gives you so much of a dashboard view of what's going on in your personal finances. Mm-hmm. And as I've used it, I have a spouse who doesn't get as excited about finances as I do. So I like the fact that I'm able to share with her our net worth statement. She's able to have it and put it in her unspeakables, drawer, and she knows what's going on if something happens to me. Also want to thank everybody for the emails for Bo's coughing.
Oh, that's
it was very
messed up.
Because here's the thing: when we record this show, Bo he doesn't tell me he's about to cough. All of a sudden, I'm full on middle of a message. I guess he turned his head a little bit, starts coughing.
I was trying to cough into the refrigerator.
Enough of you gave comments that here's what we're going to do, and I think this will increase our YouTube channel subscriptions too. Is I'm going to go buy one of those shock collars that, for dogs that bark, because it's tied to something, the actions. Right. How entertaining would that be? Is every time you coughed, if it shocked you?
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. That'd be so entertaining.
But I appreciate the feedback. You guys wrote us. I think it's been heard. At a minimum, Bo won't be interrupting me as much with his coughing.
That is correct.
Not that it came from a place of selfishness, by the way. We all know a cough is a cough.
I had a cold, but it is what it is. No more colds for Bo. I'm good.
I want to share also, we have this YouTube channel that we launched. We did the whole giveaway, the $1,000 giveaway. We've got Twitter. We've got Facebook. Thank you guys for subscribing. Go out there and check it out. It's like I said, we do really try to kick up things from a visual standpoint, like we did the Halloween episode by going to the YouTube channel. You're missing out if you're not seeing what we also have going on from a visual perspective. So go look at that. And then most importantly, I want to throw this out there, is that we came off, this is a brand new year. A lot of listeners, a lot of you guys out there you're probably setting up your own resolutions. We do the same thing. We set up business goals, planning goals. Over the next 12 to 18 months, we're going to be doing some pretty powerful stuff, I think, to kick things up a notch. we got to have your email address to keep you updated on things. Realize we don't sell that. We don't market off of it other than to just keep you updated on what we're doing here at the Money Guy Show. So go to moneyguy.com. Give us your email address. It also, here's a side benefit. I told you we're in our 13th year of doing this. By just giving us your email address, you get access to all of our archives.
That's right.
There's no cost other than your email address. You got to give us your email address so we can keep in contact. So I want to talk about the purpose of this show today, which is vision planning. And Bo, this is, I'm breaking all kind of rules. The last show we did was on the tax system.
Right.
And I gave the narrative, we don't talk about politics on the Money Guy Show.
Right.
And so far I've gotten some positive feedback that we didn't cross any lines, that we've alienated half of our listeners.
Yep.
The other thing, we don't talk a lot about religion.
Sure.
And that's on purpose because we think it's something extremely important in your personal life, but we don't want that to be something that we beat you over the head with. We want you to just, it kind of just happen naturally from the messages and the way we live our life. But I do have to tell you, when things just happen too much at the same time, and I go, there's something else going on here.
Some other power at be, yep.
So, and remember, I grew up Presbyterian, and anybody who knows anything about Presbyterians, they have this whole predestined thought towards things. So that's giving you a little church humor as well as truth. But here's where I'm going with this, is that last week, Bo and I were talking about all these New Year's resolutions, the net worth statement, and all this stuff, and you had a great analogy. You said, Brian, when we're talking about all this planning stuff, do you remember when we played church softball? And I was like, yeah, I remember when we played church softball. That's when one of the people who was big in the church totally circumvented me to get access to you, because Bo's a ball player. But when I was on this church softball team with Bo, my tendency when I was out there in right field, because and I don't want you to think that means Brian's must be horrible. It partially does, but it also means I'm left-handed. So,
That's right.
Left-handed has two positions. You have first base and right field. But while I was hanging out in right field, I was always nervous. Is the ball coming to me? I don't want the ball to come to me. I'd prefer whenever a left-hand hitter would come up for the church softball team, I go, oh no.
Yeah, I saw center fielder. Come on, shade over.
Come on over here. I'll hug the line a little closer. You come a little closer to cover this area. But you told me your perspective was the exact opposite. You said that while you were on the field in baseball, and you were a successful athlete, played college baseball, you said you wanted every ball that came off the bat to come to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you've heard basketball players that say they want that last. Michael Jordan, it's known as he said, I want that last shot to be me.
Yep.
And I think that is a mindset, because I'm not a super sports guy, but I love how that analogy is so true with your life, and the fact that the older I get, the more I realize that I don't know if the number's 80%, 85, it might be as high as 95% of people go through life and aren't taking an active position. Right. They are just letting life happen. They're not there, because you have a choice in life. You can either, and I'm going to use the whole sports analogy, is you can play the ball, meaning be the ball player, or the ball can play you.
That's right.
Now that last sentence I gave actually came from my pastor on the Sunday sermon I went to yesterday. And I thought that was hilarious.
Even though we just had that conversation.
We had this
last
conversation
week
on Wednesday or Thursday, and then my pastor builds an entire sermon about how most people react instead of being proactive in controlling their life. And I was like, well, I already knew I did the show notes for the vision plan. I was like, somebody's telling me something here. So I wanted to make sure I shared with you guys, is because you really do have a choice. And this is why it's so important, is that if you're reacting, you're letting the emotion of the situation. If you think about think about a 7, 8, 10-year-old who's playing baseball, when they're sitting in right field, especially like I was, and the ball is hit to them, the first thing they do, they're shaking. They're scared. They're like, oh my God, the ball's coming to me. So they're losing control. They're not thinking about where's the next step with the bat, with the glove and positioning. They are completely letting the emotions drive the situation and their reaction. Well, that's what happens with most people, I think, with your financial life. Right. You wait for the stock market to get beat up. You wait until you're 3 years from retiring, and then you decide you're going to check the boxes. And that is so sad to me. Yep. So let me start by sharing a story on the tragedy of not creating a plan, of not taking an active role in your personal finances. This is back in 2003.
Okay.
I had realized the company started in 2002, so this is the beginning of the business I set up. I had a couple come to me, and I wasn't their first visit. They'd actually visited another financial advisor, prospective financial advisor for them, and they let me know, hey, our plan is we're retiring in 6 months. And I
imagine they're pretty excited about that, right?
And well, they are, but there's also, and that's a great point, is that there was a fear, because taking people back in time, we look back in pages, and that's what always, when you look at the Wall Street Journal, you look on Yahoo Finance or Google, and you see 2003, you're like, man, that was a great year. I wish I had my money in the market in 2003.
Right.
But it doesn't tell the whole story, because realize somebody who comes to you in February, March of 2003 has just experienced the dot-com bubble of 2000, 2001, 2002, and in 2002, which was the third year of this downturn, the market was down, 20%.
Right, yeah.
So these are people who are approaching retirement within 6 months, and
just had a pretty bad
the market has just gotten its teeth kicked in, and now they're talking to financial advisors. They are scared. I mean, they are scared to death. And what I found is that they weren't prepared.
Okay.
Because the first advisor, so go ahead and have the mindset that they're scared, but they go to this first advisor, and they had done a good job. I give them credit. They had paid down their debt. Mm-hmm. Their mortgages were pretty much paid off.
Oh, great.
So now it's just, do you have enough money to cover the living expenses since the debt's completely paid for? Well, this first financial advisor said, you know what you guys need to do? You need to take all that paid for real estate, refinance it, and then invest the proceeds into this hybrid insurance product I have. So this is what they come to me, and I'm like, wow, that's one way to go.
Aggressive.
I mean, you could do that. And that's a whole nother podcast we could do. And by the way, you think, okay, well, maybe that was something that was going on in 2003 only. I want you guys to know, we had this same case presented to us, meaning somebody was told last year who was old enough to be, they're in their 60s.
Yeah, late 60s.
Retired, late 60s, retired. And they had an insurance agent that said, you need to refinance your house, paid for house, by the way, since because they were moving to another house. So they had their paid for house they were selling, going to be buying a new house. You would think, okay, well, you just take the proceeds, roll it into that one. No, this agent told them, you gotta go refinance or get a mortgage on the new property. And then
take all your equity and go buy some
put it in this hybrid insurance product. So, so I don't want you to think this stuff just happens one and done. This is timeless. You'll notice I could talk 20 years from now and we'll have the same theme where somebody will be selling some product. But so they come to me and they present all the facts. And one of the things we can do during a prospect meeting is we can benchmark, how are you doing? Or at least ballpark, can they truly retire? And at this meeting, I tell this poor couple who thinks they're retiring in 6 months, you know what? Your husband's going to have to work 3 to 5 more years.
Wow. So put yourself in that situation for a second. I'm going to retire in 6 months, and all of a sudden I just heard
let that
have to work
soak
for
in.
3 to 5 more years.
You work your whole career, and you think you're retiring in 6 months. You think the finish line's in sight, and then it actually, you go over the hill, and it's kind of like a Bugs Bunny, mirage. Is it that finish line's not over the next hill, and not only when you get to that point, if there was a door or a threshold you're thinking that you're going to cross, the door doesn't just close. It actually is locked and has a sign that says, come back in 5 years. Mm-hmm. From an emotional standpoint, that is devastating. And that's what I want to make sure our listeners, you don't hit that. And that's by not taking control, by not having a vision plan and not knowing what you're doing, you set yourself up. But I don't want you to think this prospect that turned into a client, and I'll give the rest of the story in a second, they're not alone, because listen to these two stats that I pulled up. 78% of millennials age 18 to 36, or 64% of Generation Xers, that's people who are 37 to 52 years of age, do not even have a will according to AARP.
So that's that thing that says what happens to all your stuff and the things you care about after you
what
die.
happens to your assets. It's really the kids is what you're really worried about, because a lot of these people, especially, that is primo. You can't say, okay, it's because these people don't have any assets. 18-year-olds to 36-year-olds, maybe they don't have enough assets, think they need wills. But I bet there's a lot of people between 18 and 36, as well as 37 to 52 that have children.
Young children in the house.
And over half, 78% for the millennials and 64% for the Generation Xers, don't have wills. So they have not let the government, or as well as family members and everybody else, know what happens to their precious children. And take that with, we just talked about New Year's resolutions. This is our first episode of 2018. Do you realize 92% of people that set New Year's resolutions fail? 92%. I mean, that number is so big. It breaks my heart. I mean, because that means that there's only 8% of people that are actually keeping up with what they're doing. We all know it. There's a reason I watched the Ryan Seacrest thing. I'm so boring. I'm at home on New Year's Eve, and Ryan Seacrest, and you saw it was like Planet Fitness or something was the sponsor for the Ryan Seacrest show. The reason is because they know you're going to come in and you're going to set up a payment plan with them, and 2 weeks later you're going to be off of your New Year's resolution. But guess what? Whatever they charge a month, $50, $100 a month, is going to just keep on rocking and rolling and carrying on that New Year's resolution for you.
So, I mean, and I think we know that the top 3 financial resolutions, I think anecdotally out there are, number 1 is to get in shape. Number 2 is usually to kind of get yourself in a good place spiritually. And then number 3 is often to get your finances in order. And so by hearing that 92% of people don't do that, that means 92% of the folks out there don't actually follow through with getting their finances in order. So we want to kind of walk you through the steps today of how to do that, how to work through that process.
So, and that's exactly right, Bo, because what we're trying to do is we want you to reach that financial fulfillment. I mean, it doesn't have to just be this grandiose plan that you're out there buying lottery tickets for. We want it to be something that's actually more attainable that you can do. So, the 2 biggest things, the first thing you can do if you're trying to figure out a plan of action, because that's what we want to do, is you can go get you somebody that's going to help you have accountability. Sure. You can have you a financial coach, because there's 2 things that a financial advisor, I know this is the 2 big things we do for our clients is we tell clients, do you have enough so you truly can go through that path to financial independence, go through the threshold of knowing if you can leave the workforce. But the second thing we do for clients is we tell them, hey, you can flip the switch from being a saver to a spender. There's nothing wrong with consuming now that you built all these assets up over the years. So those are the 2 biggest things we do when people take the relationship to the next level.
And I feel like sometimes that's the harder one, telling people that, hey, it's okay to start spending money. It's okay to go on that trip. It's okay to have that thing that you've saved all these years for.
So, and this is my soft ask of you, is that if you think you've gotten to the point and you're trying to figure out, well, where do I fit into this retirement plan? We'd love for you to reach out to us at Abound Wealth or the money, because that's what we do is it's part of this abundance cycle. We're going to load you up with tons of free advice today. And we just ask that you learn, that you apply, that you grow what you've got going on. But then once you reach a level of success, we'd love for you to think of us to be that partner, that accountability, that coach, to make sure that you really are ready to go across that financial independence threshold. So let's, before we jump into these 7 tips and planning, checklists that you can do for the 7 steps for the vision plan, I do want to give you the rest of the story because I don't want to leave y'all hanging on this couple from 2003. I do want to tell you that this client they're still clients of the firm. Mm-hmm. I was happy to report that he was actually able to retire within 3 years. It was actually, it wasn't the full 5 years that I told him at the meeting. And their accounts are positioned now more than ever for success. So there was a happy ending, even though it kind of started out with a tragic beginning. So let's kind of jump into these 7 steps. But I want to caution people, because I think most people with their resolutions, I want you to think bigger than, is this about me,
losing 10 pounds.
Losing 10 pounds, going to bed on time. I mean, we can all set these super easy resolutions. I'm thinking about, I want you to set goals and have a vision for something that's truly going to change your life. I'm talking about big stuff. Like, do you need to move to another state? Do you need to change jobs?
Do you need to start that business?
Start a business. I mean, that's exactly right. So think big, because here's what we have found from the research is that most people underestimate what they can do in the long term, but they overestimate their goals in the short term.
That's so true.
It really is. So that's why I want you to think about this, because a lot of times we'll go take on all these obligations, all these commitments in the short term, but then we always stay with this boring, low plan. Your opportunity and your potential is much bigger than you probably give yourself credit for. So here's the moves that are going to give you the best version of yourself going forward. So number 1, write it down.
Oh, that seems so simple.
You've got to record your goals because the difference between a goal and a dream is that dream sits out there in everybody's brain. Everybody wants to be successful. Right. Everybody wants to be affluent. You want to have some level of success. But the people who are actually going the next step, it thins the herd tremendously. So you've got to record your goal. You got to be specific. Write down what you actually want to accomplish. And then and I want to give you proof. We have been to so many financial planning conferences, and for years, they always say, you know what you need to do? You need to write down, put pen to paper, and figure out who your A clients, your B clients, your C clients are, and then look at what that looks like for your business. I heard that for probably the first 6 to 8 years that I was in business for myself.
And never actually did it.
Never did it. So I did it. Finally, I got so motivated after a conference. I did it, looked at it, and I was like, wow, I have a group of C clients. This is not perfect.
Sure.
It's not ideal. And I wish that A client list would get bigger, but I don't know. I mean, I got to come up with a course of action to do it. I kid you guys not. As soon as I recorded the goal, it's almost like subconsciously things started moving in a better direction. Yep. So just the sheer fact of recording what you want to happen, I think you will be surprised at how much your inner self, that inner voice, is going to get to work just as hard as you're going to get to work with the physical steps you're going to do.
And, you can do this in your financial life the same way you do it with other goals. So if your goal is to lose 20 pounds and you put a sticky note on the mirror every morning that says, are you on the path? You can do that same thing. If one of your goals is to get your estate documents in order, put a sticky note on the bathroom mirror that says, have you contacted an estate attorney?
Yep.
Have you done a net worth statement? Do those same things. It'll help you get your financial life in order the same way.
So the second step, and this one ties into why 92% of New Year's resolutions die, is that I think the second step is so important, and that is know and understand your why. And we wrote the why in capital letters because so much of what happens to us is what's driving you. What's your motivation? Why do you even want this goal? And I think people, when they think about the weight loss challenges or getting their finances in a better place, if you just put these ethos type, goals out there that really don't have any teeth to them, they're not specific, like we talked about in step one, they don't ever become a reality. So we would definitely want to help you work through, why are you even pursuing this goal? Because the goal of saying, hey, I just want to make more money.
Sure.
Why?
Yeah.
I mean, why do you feel like you need to make more money? What is your motivation? If you know your motivation, it will help you create the triggers, the habits that are actually going to make this happen.
That's exactly right.
But if it's just it's not much different than you need to record the goal to make from dream form to written form, and then understanding the why, it becomes a vision. And the tip we always give people is also start the process with a vision for what you want the end result to be. I think that is that so often that is skipped. And so because you don't know what the end result is, the roadmap is just all over the place. It's rudderless because you don't have a goal for where you actually want to end up with things.
Again, the really easy example is, New Year's resolution, I want to get my estate documents done because those guys on the Money Guy show told me to. That's probably not going to stick.
Yep.
When you look down at your kids and you think, man, if something were to happen to me and my spouse, I want to be the one that decides who raises my children, who brings them up, who provides for them, not let the state that I live in make that decision. So when you can have that purpose behind it, it really makes those goals tangible and real, and gives you actually something to strive for.
So a lot of you're hearing this and you're like, okay, written plan, the why, I get that. But number 3, you're like, there's all these reasons why this shouldn't work. I mean, this is the mindset that I think most people, and this is why we have such a low implementation rate, is that a lot of people start thinking of all the obstacles. Sure. They start thinking of all the reasons they shouldn't do this. Because I get it. I mean, getting up and making action is hard. And that's why here's number 3 is recognize that passion and purpose can win out over the uncertainty of change. And I wrote that down when I was writing down those words. I was really thinking about the fact of is you go through your journey of trying to figure out where you want to be, you have to think about what's at stake. Mm-hmm. Why do you, it goes back to that why we're doing this, but then start thinking about if this came your way, you have to be willing to do something that you weren't willing to do previously. Right. You have to crack those eggs.
If you're a client of ours, if you ever worked through our prospect process before, one of the very first things we do when you become a client is we do a savings goal. How much of your income should you be saving to reach the goals that you want to reach? And what's always amazing in that meeting is it's always a little uncomfortable. We show you, hey, you might need to be saving an extra $2,000, $3,000 a month. And I can audibly hear the gasp as we tell new clients, like, holy cow, I hired these guys and now they're telling me this. The reason we show that to you is because that's a goal. That's an aspiration to move to. And if you are committed, maybe you can't start today saving that extra $2,500 a month, but maybe you can start saving $500 extra a month and you can grow into it.
And I also want to think about this from an emotional standpoint too, is that a lot of times it's just like this podcast. This podcast was started with a passion. I mean, this was completely a hobby with an educational platform, a passion. And what sustained it, I didn't have a complete plan. Nobody ever has a complete plan. I'm not so sure that Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs, when they were putting stuff together in a garage many, many years ago, they didn't know what Apple was going to turn into. Nobody really has that complete vision, but you do have to start. You have to just recognize your passion is a place that this is the next step to reach the beginning process of that better version of yourself.
I can't remember who said this, but I heard a beautiful thing, and it was moving forward with 80% of a plan is better than sitting still with 100% of nothing.
No kidding.
If you have a little bit of it figured out, at least start moving in that direction.
So number 4, plan for the worst so you can get through the tough times. Now, I just went through a positive step with number 3, talking about the passion can overcome the uncertainty. But I do realize I come from a public accounting background. That doesn't mean that I don't want you thinking about all the things that could go wrong. Sure. I just want you to have a plan of action that will help overcome them. So planning for the worst ties back to that power of preparation. You know, I think this client that I mentioned from 2003 that I gave the story from the beginning, if they would have been planning from the worst or having a plan of preparation, 10, 20 years earlier, none of this would have been a surprise to them. But, and here's the other thing is I think, and I've already given this answer, as I said, most people are way too rosy in their short-term observations. Right. We all know small business ownership is one of the riskiest endeavors you can actually do. I mean, they don't ask about it on life insurance applications like private pilots or jumping out of a plane, but it is one of those risky endeavors that has a very high fail margin. And I think the reason it does is because so many people are too optimistic on the short-term prospects and they don't take that plan of preparation to do the worst case scenarios. So, and here's the thing we like to talk about when you're doing a vision plan. I know when I do a stress test type vision plan, business plan for the worst case scenarios, I'll create 3 separate spreadsheets. And I'm talking about if you're doing like a new small business or you're going to go change jobs or you're going to move to another city, maybe you have to create spreadsheets for yourself that you have worst case scenario where the wheels have fallen off the wagon. Oh my God, this is bad. Or we're going to be able to prepare for this. The most likely of what you think will probably happen. And then the third one is, holy cow, this is actually working out much better than anticipated. I think that way it gives you don't have to just focus all on the negative. You can have what you think will happen, a worst case scenario, as well as, holy cow, this is awesome. So I think it's good if you think about that from having the 3 different versions. The other thing I want you to go into a plan of action and plan for the worst is cash. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think so many people, small businesses fail so often is because people didn't take into account that it wasn't going to take a year to get the business off the ground. It was going to take probably 2 to 3 years. So you better make sure that you measure twice, cut once, have the cash, have the wherewithal to prepare to have the assets, the resources, the support of family members so that you can plan for the worst and make it through on the other side.
I was just thinking as you were saying that, Brian, one of the things that we do for clients, anytime somebody comes to us and they're preparing for retirement or they're at retirement, and we did this for the clients you referenced, we always do a retirement analysis where we say, what happens if the year you retire, 2008 is the following year?
Exactly.
How would that look? How would you have weathered? Now, we don't think that's going to happen. That's most likely not what's going to be your situation. But if you know you have a plan in place that can account for even the worst of the worst timing, you're setting yourself up for success. Because this is what we know to be true. No matter what our plan is, no matter what our vision is, no matter what our goals are, it's going to be a bumpy ride.
Yep.
I mean, how many times have you set a goal, Brian, where everything went exactly the way you hoped? I mean, you started a business, right? And the day you opened the doors, all kinds of clients just showed up, right? I mean, that's the way it worked.
I am very aware that I am one of those people that is way too optimistic in the short term. I mean, examples I give is that when I was turned 16 years old, I thought the sheer fact that I had a car
You're going to fill up that date calendar.
that it was going to, the dates were just going to roll in.
It didn't work that way for you?
I was shocked that more people weren't drawn to the 1984 Ragalier that I affectionately called it. It just didn't happen. So I think, and it's the same thing when I started my company in 2002. I thought all the local home people that I grew up with their kids, the doctor that I went to when I had, coughs as a kid, I thought all these people, man, they're going to have these rosy visions of Brian Preston starting a company, and they're going to come want to be at my grand opening. He's gone out on his own celebrate. It doesn't work out that way. Right. But I will say, with that said, I will tell you, I was way too rosy on the initial projections, but I had no idea where the level of success would be 15, 20 years down the road. And that's what I think that can apply to your life as well. But you do need to plan for the worst. Now, fortunately, even though I thought all these people were going to show up at my grand opening of the business, my wife and I had taken 2 to 3 years of saving cash and planning, and we had the bridge money to make it through those cold, hard days, because it did take close to 3 years to get cash flow to a point that we survived.
Yeah.
So thank God we planned for the worst. And that leads away to number 5. Don't shy away from the path that's hard or not fun. Do what needs to be done to research success, even if it's not your favorite thing to do in the world. And this gets back, here's the point of this. If you go and do something important, first thing is, after you create the plan, you're going to notice obstacles just start happening. Mm-hmm. I mean, and I'm not trying to dissuade you from doing it, but just know that an obstacle doesn't have to be money. It could be somebody whispers in your ear. I mean, I can remember when I started my company, my in-laws, because my father-in-law had the corporate pension, got the Rolex at retirement. He was like, "You want to do what? You're leaving a perfectly good job? It's like leaving."
What'd you do wrong?
Why do you want to go start your own company? I mean, and so that's one of those things that I think you have to understand, that the obstacles might come. And then there's also the fact that I know when I went out on my own, I didn't have any clients. I mean, this was more of a passion that I did it. So there was a lot of times I had to go out there and grind and try to get business. And guess what? My stomach hurt.
That's it.
I mean, y'all know I'm a big Dave Grohl fan. I love, Foo Fighters. I loved him in Nirvana. And he's made all these documentaries on music. There's Sound City. There's, when he did all the recording of his last album and all the different studios. But when he's gone and produced these documentaries, he has let it be known that he has to go get corporate suits, as he calls them, to fund this endeavor. It makes his stomach hurt to go talk about these things, to get the money for it. And I think that is not something that's just left for Dave Grohl. I think that is left for anybody who is doing anything that's meaningful. You're going to have to do stuff that makes your stomach hurt. And I wish I could tell you that it's all going to be easy, but taking risk is actually good. I think it's healthy. And, what I always tell people also is that it's that journey that is actually going to create the happiness. Y'all have heard me talk about my friend that inspired me. His dad was a welder, got laid off. And then he went and bought, he started his own metal fabrication. And whenever I talk to him about his business, I always notice that glossiness where you can tell he's going back into past times. And you can just tell there's a look back over all the hard times, but then coming out on the other side and being successful. Now that I've gotten old, I mean, I'm not old, but I'm getting old enough that I'm not the young guy in the room anymore necessarily at all events, that I get it. I see it now. It is that journey. It's that purpose that gives you the happiness, because you remember all the struggles, but then you remember, hey, I made it through it. I have a track record that made it through those things, and that journey actually is where the fulfillment lies. A lot of people think the happiness comes from the money. The happiness is not in the money. The happiness is in the journey, the fulfillment of going the road less traveled.
But you have to be willing to gut it out. I'm reminded there's a famous weightlifter, and he always says this. He says, everybody wants to be big, but not everybody wants to lift the heavy weight. You have to be willing to put the time in. And I'm reminded, Brian, about, you knew you wanted to pursue this accounting profession, right? And so one of the things you had to do was when it came time for you to take the CPA exams and study, you didn't get to go to Mardi Gras with your friends.
That's exactly
if you're
right.
somebody out there, you say, I want to be financially independent. I want to leave this job. You have to make that decision that, okay, maybe I don't want to take that trip this year. Maybe I don't want to go get that Starbucks latte this morning, or whatever the case may be in your situation. You do have to kind of do those things that you might not want to do so you can have the things that you really want the most.
And a lot of people, because we all know that you're supposed to find a job that you love so that you never work a day in your life. So a lot of you are getting that, but I think that I have to correct people on this and the fact that everybody's going to have tasks that you don't want to do. So how do you get through those tasks?
Right.
What's the coping mechanism? What's the tool set you can do to help you that? And I always tell people, remember, anticipate what it's going to feel like afterwards. If you can anticipate what it's going to feel like afterwards, that can help bridge you, give you enough passion and emotion to get to the other side of the equation. That leads to number 6. We are analytical people, though. We like to know
not us.
numbers.
I
think that's why prospects like becoming clients, is because we have designed a process which is very analytical driven. It's not driven all on emotion. So much of the financial profession sells off the emotions. We try to come at it with a skeptic side and add some analytics. And that ties to number 6, which is develop benchmarks and measurable goals to track your progress. Now, I think this is so important, just not only because of my mindset of being an analytical person, but if you don't know where the beginning lies, where the middle lies, and the end lies, what the heck are you doing?
How do you know if you're even on course if you don't have some sort of some way to check?
So you've got to have some measurability to your goals, and then you've got to have the ability to kind of, from time to time, do a check. I was sitting at, I was with a group last week, and there was some goal planning with this group. And one of the goals thrown out by one of the people that was at this meeting was that they wanted to have their company grow by their revenue grow by 25%.
Okay.
And she was saying, I just don't know what the next step is on how do I start that process if I know I want 25% more? And the first thing I threw out, I said, well, how often are you looking at the financial statements right now to know where you are? This is back to that ABC written analysis. And she's like, well, I don't look at it that often. I look at it, kind of once a year. And so I was like, well, you kind of have to know where you are and have an accountability. And that's why you have to have benchmarks and measurable goals to know where you stand. And let me give you some examples. Like if you are one of these people that set a New Year's resolution about your health, you probably ought to go get a physical so you can get your blood work done and you can kind of see, okay, this is where I'm at. This is my baseline. And so that you can come back 6 months from now, maybe you've started a workout routine or you're eating better. You can go back and look at that analysis. And then it also makes sense if you have some guidance from your doctor on what is that you're trying to get to, and you have some progress markers that you can look at. The other thing from a financial perspective, what if you want to know if your personal finance is going well? You have that net worth statement.
That's right.
Remember, we talked about if you do the annual net worth statement, you're going to be able to, it's going to tell you all the things. You can look at how your assets grew over the year. You can see how your liabilities went down. So you need to have some benchmarks. And businesses, if you're setting up a new business, you're going to go back to that business plan. Remember the best, the worst, and then the holy cow, this is working out great business plan. If you have that, you'll have a benchmark to be able to go and see how well you're doing. It's essentially providing the rudder for your vessel that's, sailing for the goals.
And what I really love about long-term vision planning and achieving long-term goals is that all a long-term goal really is a series of shorter, small goals that you're hitting, and those are the benchmarks. So if you're someone who wants to get your estate documents in order, maybe your first goal, do a net worth statement. Yeah. Second goal, get a list of estate attorneys to talk to. Third goal, set the meeting with the estate attorney. You can kind of work through the entire process that way, giving yourself little milestones to hit to keep you on track and working towards that.
Without a doubt. And that leads to our final goal. And this one is understand the power of gratitude. Gratitude. Gratitude, doesn't that mean thank you? Doesn't that mean, and it's true, because I want you to understand that a lot of you guys sitting out there, you have a goal, and you're going to go through all these steps, you're going to write it down, you're going to think about all the hard work that's going to go into it, but there's also going to come a point where you need to understand that a lot of what you want probably has already been done by somebody else, whether it's starting a new business.
Yep.
I think there is mentorship and going and finding somebody who has already done what you're trying to accomplish is more powerful than you realize. So when I talk about the power of gratitude, I'm talking about going out there and finding successful people and then letting them try to love on you, being generous. Achievement is not a lonely venture. I think a lot of people, I look back on my life and you realize that there's fingerprints of all kind of things. There's the things that provide you inspiration. I know I was an accountant who got into personal finance, and a lot of that was driven by me reading The Wealthy Barber or The Millionaire Next Door, reading those type of things. And then I can remember I went to my very first NAPFA conference. I realized NAPFA is the trade organization for all the fee-only financial advisors. I went to my first trade organization with NAPFA conference, and there was Cheryl Holland, who gave out CD-ROMs with all of her templates and business practices. And it was just her achievement and generosity that she was willing to share was just incredible.
And I think about, Brian, how grateful we are, and we talk about this all the time, for every single person that's listening to this podcast right now. Because it's the mechanism that allowed us to move across state lines. It allows us to provide for our family. It's an amazing thing. And we didn't do that by ourselves. We had to have a listenership to do that. We had to have folks who care about the information we're sharing.
I have found, and this is why I think you will find successful people will be generous and share with you, is that I have found that the more we give, the more we try to do this abundance cycle that as I call it, it just seems to work out. And I also want you to not only think about in terms of how you can go to people and ask them for stuff, I want you to internalize this to yourself. And this is where the gratitude also comes in, is that you have to be comfortable with what you have and where you are, because you'll never get more of what you want until you're really happy with what you have. I mean, I think that there is something about you have to have comfort with where you are in life and understand the power of thank you. I've told people in other podcasts, but I think the reason you have done so well and grown so fast at my firm is you always say thank you. I mean, if somebody, and I get this, I mean, because I can remember being younger and you'd go out to eat socially, and then somebody, you were out with your friends, but maybe a parent of the friends. And this is I'm not talking about as a kid. I'm talking about as a grown adult. You're at an event, a sporting event. And then that more successful person who's a little older, longer in the tooth buys dinner for the table. And I can remember, being younger, just out of college, and that change. I was like, man,
it's a big deal.
Because I was trying to figure out where I was going to come up with the $70 to pay for this meal. And now that's taken care of. I always made sure I went above and beyond to say thank you. Yep. You've always done that in your career.
Absolutely.
And I would tell anybody out there listening, if you want to make it repeat, if you want people to continue to be generous, make sure you understand the power of thank you to let people, when they do nice things for you, tell them thank you. We met a person last week, Bo, who was telling us they were raving about their boss. And I was like, you don't realize what an incredible employee you probably are to him, too, because I said, just the sheer fact that you're cheerleading for your boss right now.
And his boss wasn't around. This wasn't self-serving.
He wasn't even in another state. This wasn't even at an event that was tied to his. It was just somebody we met out and about. And I was like, what an incredible testament for that situation. So, and that's the power of thank you, of the power of being gracious and gratitude for the life and what you have. I mean, it really can go beyond what you realize.
So there are 7 steps we just laid out. I'm going to run back through them real quick. Number 1, write it down, record your goals. Number 2, understand your why, understand your purpose. 3, you need to recognize that passion and purpose can win out over the uncertainty of change. Yeah. A positive attitude can overcome a lot. Number 4, plan for the worst so you can get through the tough times. Number 5 is be willing to do what others aren't. Don't shy away from the hard track. The 6th step is make sure you measure your process with benchmarks. Make sure you measure how you are doing. And then number 7 is understand the power of thank you, the power of gratitude in your life.
And I want to the last thing, we're closing out here, and this is our first podcast of 2018. So I definitely want you to go out there to YouTube, go Twitter, go to Facebook, and go visit moneyguy.com. But I felt like this is also the perfect time to tell you on the journey, because, man, when we talk about power of gratitude, I look at my journey. I mean, and I don't talk about this enough because I don't like, to internalize and then share with how well things are going.
It's hard.
It's really a hard thing, but I think it is a teachable moment my initial why, because I want to kind of show you how every one of these concepts, these 7 concepts that pertains to my life and the journey. I'm a reluctant entrepreneur. I didn't go out and decide I wanted to be a small business owner. I was actually, I think I was a great employee. Things were going good, but my father got sick in 2000. I can still remember when I found out, and he passed quickly. I mean, he got leukemia, but it was a version that he passed away within 6 months of being diagnosed with it. And it just rocked me to my core. I mean, it was one of those things that made you question, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. So that was, and when I realized my dad was at every one of my plays. He was at my basketball games. He was at my tennis matches. I quickly looked at my life leaving the house at 6 a.m, mm-hmm. coming home at 7, 8 o'clock at night because of traffic, as well as just working hard and trying to make a good impression with my bosses, that I wasn't going to be able to do that with my family. Right. I wasn't going to be able to be the father that my father was for me. So my why was, I got to get my life in order. My life balance is way off. And the things that are important to me, are not focused. They're not the central part of this. So it created a ton of clarity and helped me overcome, because that's the second part, is how do you go from just having this passion and purpose? You also, that passion and purpose is what overcame those no's and gave me my why.
That's right.
The second thing is, just by my personality, I did tons of preparation. My wife and I were able to save. We had, about $45,000 saved up. She was working at the time, so we were able to live off of one salary, essentially. And that preparation, having those business plans that we still look back on and laugh at from time to time, Bo.
They are, and it's so beautiful to look at them now. We really gotta frame them at some point.
I don't want people to think I was an idiot when I was setting it up, because the numbers are it looks tiny to what actually has occurred. But at the time, that's as part of that whole part of, you get the glossy overness, is you remember what you were thinking as you drafted that stuff. But there was tons of preparation. I wrote it down. I planned for the worst. Mm-hmm. It was tied in directly to what we're telling you. And then I did not shy away from the tasks that were hard. Here's the thing, is that I think a lot of people fail because they know they have too good of a safety net. Mm-hmm. It's easy to quit when okay, well, I get a do-over.
There's not a lot to lose.
When I left the company, remember I was on this bridge of, I was really freaking out because my dad had passed away, had given me perspective. Once I had told them I was gone, I had nowhere to go but to succeed. I mean, because failure really, in my eyes, it was not an option. And that's why I had to grind. I mean, I even cold called. Mm-hmm. I mean, it wasn't successful, but I cold called. I joined a bunch of organizations. I did it because I know you guys, you see me on the podcast, you're like, well, he's an extrovert. I'm a hybrid extrovert. Realize I do have a lot of CPA parts to me. When I go to a room full of people, I get overwhelmed very quickly around a bunch of people. I don't mind presenting in front of people, but I don't like to go up and talk to people I know, because there are some introvert things about me, but I overcame that to go get business.
Because you had to.
Fear's an incredible motivator. You really make that stuff happen. So I didn't shy away from the hard tasks, even if they weren't fun, and even though my stomach hurt. And that's part of it. And then the last thing, after I started having some success, I quickly recognized when the iPod came out, that this thing was going to change the world. And I always had this desire that, man, it sure would be nice if everybody had a platform to get good advice that wasn't swayed only by the desire to sell more life insurance or whatever the financial product that is being pushed. So, because I don't want all the insurance agents to think, man, he's picked on the insurance products now 2 or 3 times. That's not the goal. But it does show that gratitude led to this podcast. And then, as you mentioned, Bo, the podcast, because of its thought of paying it forward and just giving, has allowed us to move across state lines. So I didn't have a special needs daughter when I started this company. And then, but I had a special needs daughter, and this podcast is the bridge that allowed us to move to a whole nother state. Right. This was a hobby that the passion turned it into essentially a component of a growing business. Right. And that's the big thing I would encourage you, is that you might have an amateur vision or an undeveloped plan. Don't wait for perfection. Bo is spot on when he said it's better to have an 80% complete plan than it is to wait for a 100% perfected plan. Because and I'll tell you, some of the clients that come to us are perfectionists. And I see them, they go through scenarios so many different ways that they get frozen into doing absolutely nothing.
Analysis paralysis.
It is, and it's a great way of putting it. And that's what I want you to understand, that the size of your heart, your desire, and what you want to accomplish can make those miracles really go. Your brain wants to be successful. It's just a matter of, are you doing the steps? And I know we're a financial podcast. We get so deep. We just did it. If you want the analytics, go listen to the tax plan that we just did. But I'd be crazy if I didn't try to get you guys motivated to do something bigger than just think about your finances in terms of, am I saving 10% or 15 or 20% of my income? You've got to start having a vision for what you want the future to have. And that's what a lot of you are probably getting to the point where you're going, well, I have some thoughts, but I don't know if it's perfect. Mm-hmm. If you're looking for a partner, you're looking for a coach, you're looking for somebody that's going to make this journey easy, because there is some frustration that can occur with any plan, and experience and having a professional shape that vision makes it quicker and makes it easier, a lot less pain involved. We'd love for you to consider taking the relationship to the next level. This podcast has already allowed us to connect with lots of other listeners who became clients, and we'd love to have that opportunity. And I want to remind everybody once again, go to moneyguy.com. You got to give us our email address, because we have some big things going. Because a lot of you are saying, well, yeah, but I know we don't qualify to work with you guys just yet. We hear from you all the time. We're coming up with content that's going to help you too, but you're not going to know about it unless we get that email address.
Can I say it's going to help everyone? Is that realistic?
I really do believe that.
We're coming out with something right now that is going to be beneficial for every single listener out there. Is that fair to say?
I think it is. I think it's spot on. So, guys, welcome to 2018. So weird to hear me say that, because I can still remember being a kid thinking, I'm going to buy that Corvette when the year 2000, buying a Corvette.
This isn't new news, but wrap your head around the fact that kids born after Y2K are now adults.
Oh man, that is.
Think about that, right? Wrap your head around that.
Yeah, that's crazy. Truthfully, I just mentioned when I was 2000, I thought I was going to buy a Corvette. I'm getting to the age now where everybody buys Corvettes, because I think the average age for a Corvette is in the 50s. So we did that on a podcast years ago. But I'm not buying a Corvette, by the way. Still waiting for the Tesla Model 3. But thank you guys for coming and tuning in, sharing a portion of your life. As you can tell, we're trying to share what we've got going on, and can't wait to talk to you in the next few weeks.